Well, good evening, everybody. Great to have you here. Thanks for joining with me tonight. I'm really looking forward to being with you and truthfully learning along with you. Is a couple times a month we invite some guests in who are going to share insight from their own personal experience of life and navigating the ups and downs. And so that's what we're going to be doing on this. Now, I should say that there is a chat feature apparently, and I would love it if you would maybe reach out. You can ask a question or two. I'm just saying right now tonight, there's a really good chance I won't see any of them. Okay, we are just learning this new technology, and I'm really happy because I have Lindsay sitting over here, Lindsay Wise, and she's not giving me the "it's not working yet" signals or anything like that. So quite happy. Oh, I just got a little double thumbs up. So I think we're happening tonight. I'm really excited to have with us Karissa Sovdi. Some of you know Karissa. Karissa has lived in Victoria since 2010. Been here a long time. She is a registered clinical counselor with a master's from the University of Seattle. That's quite an accomplishment. That's amazing. Been attending SBC since 2014. Has been an integral part of the ministry here. Everything from being on the board to leading worship. Just a great servant. Love having her here as a part of our church. Karissa is also a writer, a very good writer. And she's working on publishing her book, Singleness and Christianity, A Life to be Lived, Not a Problem to be Solved. That is a great, great statement right there. So she's working on publishing that. But she's also a leader and a thinker. And what I really appreciate about Karissa is she has a unique gift in that she's proven the ability to articulate things that are kind of complex and can be confusing, and seems to be able to bring clarity to them. And so I just want to welcome Karissa. And if I can do this right, I'm just going to click right there, and boom, there she is.
Hello.
Good to have you.
I was going to say good to be here, but that just sounds like I'm bragging about my apartment.
And
good
it's
to
amazing.
See you. Good to see you.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I'm so happy that we've basically been glitch-free already. So this is great. We're a few minutes in, and it's going well. Thanks for helping kind of kick this off.
Yeah, my pleasure.
This is a dream, just an idea that God kind of laid on my heart in the summer. And I remember talking to you about the idea, and you helped kind of bring some shape to it. Oh, by the way, Karissa, look at you, matching pillow with your top there.
That was accidental.
Come on.
This is literally what I've been wearing all day.
Fantastic. Just looking so good. No, thanks for helping kick this off. As I said in the intro, what I'm hoping to accomplish here is just recognizing that life can be kind of bumpy and tricky and kind of chaotic. We are experiencing that. And this is probably more personal to me now than it's ever been. You know my story. 3 years ago, my life kind of hit the fan in a pretty significant way. And as I like to put it, I had a Wile E. Coyote experience. Do you know Wile E. Coyote?
I do.
Nice.
I'm just old enough to know that.
Just old enough. He was the guy always chasing the road runner and would run into a wall, hit hard, and slither to the ground. And yeah, that's how I felt 3 years ago. My life hit the fan. Faced some nervous breakdown, depression, anxiety. I don't know what all you want to call it. You add it all. It was just really difficult. And Carla and I invited you in. We had just started getting to know you and appreciated you, and kind of invited you into our inner circle. And you journeyed with us, and just so grateful for who you are, for your friendship.
Thanks.
What I've discovered is that this can be a profound thing when people come and journey along others, and you start hearing more stories. And so I'm excited about where Thursday Night Live goes, and excited about tonight and having you here. So, COVID.
Yeah.
COVID. 2020. Woo! Karissa's year.
Not so much.
No?
Not so much. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to have the, I feel like there's this victim Olympics happening right now where everyone feels like they have to justify why 2020 sucks more for them. Yeah. I think this has just been a really hard year in general. And And I think if it were only the pandemic, that would be quite enough. But there's lots of other sort of stressors and tensions going on socially, politically, economically. Life goes on. There's still birth and death and marriage and divorce and sickness and health. And so it's been a full year. For me, it's been a bit unique in that I injured my back earlier in the year. And so about 10 days before COVID really kind of locked everything down where we are, I was put on urgent bed rest. And so I spent the first 2 months of lockdown pretty much flat on my back, which is not something I would wish on anyone. So I had like a 2-week heads up on some of the like canceling all of the plans and being home alone thing. But yeah, just been a really trying time. It's been a really long recovery. I'm doing a lot better. And shout out to BackFit Spinal Health because they've been my angels. But just been a really long year, a long road of recovery, a lot of not being able to do anything. And it entered the year with the verse in mind of be still and know that I am God. And man, has that verse been taught to me in a myriad of ways.
Yeah. I remember when this first hit and we were, as a group, home group, we were trying to figure out a little bit, how do we do this? And we tried Zoom calls and you were very gracious and joining in as you were trying to figure out how not to move, but I needed to move. And
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
It's been so long. I forgot about that. Yep.
Yeah.
Lots of people got to Zoom with me from my pillow. So I have very few secrets from pretty much anybody in my life at this point.
So COVID is creating just all kinds of crazy experiences. We've been, what have we been in it for 5 or 6 months now?
I think longer than that. March, April.
Is it longer now?
July.
August,
September. We're on month 8.
We're in month 8 now. Oh my goodness. Summer went fast. So month 8. We were talking the other night, and you mentioned this concept, this idea that margin seems to be going away. And people, maybe just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that, I think our world is pretty chronic at pushing margin, about not leaving a lot of space emotionally or in terms of time or in terms of money, or we kind of live life at the edge. And I think we're really seeing the fruit of that now, because I just think we're all at our max. And, when you're not at your max and someone kind of, cuts you off in traffic, you might get a little bit frustrated, but you can kind of let it go. And when you're not at your max and you're in the grocery store and they don't have what you need that week, it's annoying, but you can let it go. But when you're at your max, those things just send you right over the edge. And we're all at our max. And so then our interactions just keep leveling up because that tension meets tension. And man, do we ever need God's grace? Like, I don't know about you, but I'm out of grace. I'm just out. And I feel like my prayer the last several weeks has been, God, I'm out of grace. I need your grace. I'm out of grace. I need your grace.
Yeah. I would say what I just started experiencing, I'd heard people talk about it. But all of a sudden, I'm just finding myself sort of tired. Both a physical, more, I guess, almost an emotional, from a strain of trying to think and strategize and what is next week going to look like? Is this second wave? Is it coming? How and there's a fatigue. There is a very legitimate fatigue to it that hard to quantify, but is there.
It is there, and it is real, and in some ways, some of that can be our own doing. And something that, again, I had a bit of a jump start on it, but because I was laying in bed and literally couldn't do anything, just the myth of control in my life was completely busted. Like, I don't think we've ever really had a lot of control. I think that, God's always been the one with control, and we just like to think we have control. But man, like, any sense I had of control was just gone. But there's a relief in that. And I think that there was a sort of a mantra I got off of, I think it was somebody named John Acuff that I followed on Twitter. And early days, he said, stay in the day. Stay in the day. And man, is that important, because if I go into tomorrow, it's just anxiety fest. If I'm trying to plan too far in advance, well, what if that gets canceled, or what if that changed, or what are these contingencies, or what? And so, I mean, there's something to be said for being proactive, or having some, some structure in place, or trying to, self-manage and having what you need to take care of yourself. But I think thinking into tomorrow is actually not the solution right now. And really, that's scriptural, right? Like, give us this day our daily bread. We don't need tomorrow's bread or tomorrow's toilet paper today.
Right.
We need today's today.
Oh,
I don't
my
need
goodness. Toilet paper.
Yeah.
I forgot all about that madness.
Yeah.
At the beginning. And that was a panic.
Yeah.
A reaction that went crazy.
Yeah. And it's us trying to grip onto these last tendrils we think we have of control. And something that has been such a gracious and beautiful lesson for me this year is all of the things that I would have done. Like, if you had told me, hey, in March, you're going to be on bed rest, and I would have stocked up my kitchen. I would have pre-made all this food. I would have planned, and I didn't get the chance to plan, and God took care of me anyway. And in some ways, in more beautiful ways than I could imagine, community surrounding me and people taking care of my needs and doing my grocery shopping and doing my laundry and cleaning my house and all of these things, all these ways people took care of me. And I just thought that's cool. It's more than a metaphor. I mean, that's lived experience, but that's your God too. And so what if we didn't try and figure out tomorrow? What if we didn't try and worry about tomorrow? Like, that's Jesus's words, right? Tomorrow has enough worry about tomorrow. Thought, well, I got what I need to do today, and that's all I need today.
We, a phrase that hit me a number of years ago is that sometimes I can get stuck, and I see others getting stuck with a when and then sort of thought process. When this happens, then I will be content. It will be good, and they sort of have their list and there's sort of expectations built up around all of that.
Sure.
And planning can be, it's not a bad thing to plan. The Bible talks about that as well, but there's a tension there that maybe we're just not living out well.
Yeah. I was thinking about this week, and I think it's the difference between expectation and expectancy.
Okay.
So expectancy is believing that God will show up, having hope that there will be a solution. Expectation is dictating what that needs to look like. And so I think that we're all being called on how much we've been trying to tell God what to do, how much we've been trying to dictate how life happens. And it's like, I know God will provide, but when I start saying, unless he provides like this and like this and like this, then it's a no-go. Then I'm going to be disappointed because I'm trying to box him in. And so I think we can have expectancy that things will work out. We can have hope and anticipation about what's possible tomorrow. We can start imagining and visioning and planning in that sort of way. But I think when we start to take that control back and put in all of these pieces of how it needs to look, we set ourselves up for disappointment. I mean, the memes in the early days of COVID were really funny to me. They were like, your grandparents went to war. Surely you can stay home and watch Netflix, like that kind of. But I think there's a lot to that in the sense of it's showing us our privilege and showing us how much we expect in terms of comfort and how much we expect in terms of ease and how much we expect in terms of speed. And so it's really jarring when those things aren't available to us. And so if we step back and go is it that I need that on demand, or that I'm just used to that being on demand? And if I were to go, hey, if that takes longer than usual, I'll be okay. Just sort of modifying what we expect out of life, I think could be really useful. I think it was Neil Anderson. He's the author of The Bondage Breaker. He wants to find depression as a blocked goal. So there's something in life that you want and you don't get it, or a goal or something you're working towards, or a vision for your life and you don't get it, and then you get depressed. And I think that's a lot of what's happening this year is we all had our plans for travel, and we had our plans for work, and we had our plans for special events, and we had just our assumptions about how daily life should go, not having to wear masks and not having to book appointments for the grocery store or whatever it is, or and all of those goals are being blocked, and it's supremely frustrating. And that's natural, but maybe the next step is to go, okay, what is it about my expectations that I need to modify or adjust?
Yeah.
Sense? I feel like I'm rambling.
No, that makes sense. I'd forgotten Neil Anderson's word on that. Yeah. I want to go back to something you mentioned, community as being a significant piece in sort of your positive COVID experience, not what you had anticipated. Can you flesh that out just a little bit? Like, how did you get the community? You said it, or did it show up maybe in unfamiliar ways? Maybe. Yeah.
I mean, community is a tough one because I don't think there's a formula. I think it takes a lot of trying and failing and trying again.
Yeah.
Like I've spent lots of lonely days in Victoria. But in the last few years, I feel like I've built a really solid friend circle, largely through people I've met at church, but also through people at work and through school and other venues. But I was thinking about this in connection with sort of my experience this year. And I think a big part of community is vulnerability and being okay, not being okay with each other, and being willing to ask for help and being willing to accept help when it's offered. Because I don't think the offers are as rare. Like for some people they are, but I think lots of people offer to help and like legitimately mean it. Like someone passes away, is there anything I can do? Someone gets sick, is there anything I can do? And I think what often gets missed is that, yes, this is what you can do. Because it's hard to ask for help. Like we don't want to admit that we don't want to be reliant on others. And our world sends us messages all the time that we need to be independent and figure out on our own, self-serve, self-checkout. And so actually saying yes to an offer of help takes a lot of, I feel like I'm bragging, but it took me a lot of courage. Like it was like, even when that offers came through, as lovely as that was, and as much as I'm sure there are people who go through hard things without offers of help, it still took a lot of something to be able to accept it. And that was actually a decision I made, like probably within the first hour of being sent home and sent to bed. I just was like, I can't do this alone. Like this is the time to accept all of the offers. This is the time to assign the tasks to the people. This is the time to let people literally into my dirty laundry. Like this is the time.
Yeah. Wow. Safety was one of the things that kind of rang with what you were saying there. If we're going to be vulnerable, it needs to feel safe. But we can't always know that it's safe, can we? Like vulnerability there's not an assurance that when we start to become maybe a little more vulnerable, which can allow people to reach in and help bring some healing and maybe some protection and things, we don't know how they're going to respond. Do you have any personal insight maybe on how to process that?
I think that comes back to your expectations comment. Like there's risk, and I think that we've become very risk averse as a people group, as you know, society feels like a really generic word, but sort of Western North American culture. And I think that has a lot to do with what we get disappointed about. Like, I think there's this idea, as much as we would say this is false, I think a lot of us sort of operate on this idea that there's a way to live life that if we do it just right, we won't have suffering. That if we just like have the right amount in our bank account and eat like vegan and donate to this and do ethically that and have this kind of job and go to this kind of like, I think we think that there's a way to sort of build a life without suffering. And like, that's just not true. And, you know, one of, people love to say, oh, like build your life on the promises of God. Well, one of the promises of God is in this world, you will have trouble.
Yeah.
And so in relationships, you will have trouble. In friendship, people will betray you. Like these are things that are true, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. And so I think there is a risk, and it's not always safe. And that doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. And I think it's about building resilience and building the ability to get back up and to try again rather than avoiding pain.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that, we mentioned you've been here for 10 years, but it seems like within the last few years, whatever that number is, you have been able to develop a bit of a community around you. That must have been hard those first few years, in sort of struggling to find that. Was it just literally, suck it up, Karissa, you just got to go out and find some friends, that didn't work with that person or whatever, but now is there a magic formula, or is it just literally you just have to kind of just keep putting yourself out there?
Yeah, I don't think there's a formula. If there is, I don't know it. And if I lose the friends I have now, it's not like I have a math formula worked out and I'll just pick it back up again. I think it's trial and error. I think it's trying lots of things. I think it's getting over the awkwardness. Like, we're just not good at doing friendship as adults. We don't learn about friendship beyond sort of a grade school level. And so it hasn't evolved that much. It's still kind of picking a kid on the playground and saying, hey, want to be my friend? Like going on some bad dates, if you will, and trying different community groups on for size and also not having a consumer mindset, also being a good friend, finding people you can invest in, finding people is like, okay, well, I can try, and you learn quick about what's mutual and what's not. But I don't think there's a formula. If there is, I haven't cracked it. Yeah, no,
I think that's true. Absolutely true. I think what would be surprising to people is to have known that someone like yourself may have struggled with that. Because because we just project, we see someone who looks confident, they got it all together, and man, there's a lot going on behind the shades, hey?
Yeah. And you know what? That's probably my favorite part of COVID is that the persona just isn't working right now. Like, I think my favorite thing is getting on a Zoom call with someone who's like not wearing makeup and is still in their sweats. Like, just kind of dropping this act that we've all been, why have we been playing this game for so long? Like, now that it's exposed, it sort of doesn't make any sense for how long we got away with it. But just sort of the vulnerability, the humanness, the fact that people are being more honest with each other, even if it's in a rude way, but just like, this sucks and I don't like it. And I think the realness of human interactions is a positive outcome of this season. And I hope that part doesn't go away. And like, what an excuse to bond. Like, we all hate this. And it's much easier to bond with someone over a common enemy. So what better common enemy can we have in a year? We all hate 2020. A year has no feelings. Like, what a perfect enemy to pick on.
That's good. Okay. How are you kind of keeping your head above water these days? What are maybe some of the practices? You've talked a little bit about them, but are there some other things that have just kind of helped you be buoyant through this season?
Yeah. I mean, full disclosure, sometimes I'm not keeping my head above water.
Right.
So I just want to normalize that and honor that, or just be honest about that myself. Like, this has hit me in waves, and I don't mean COVID waves, but just like, some days it just knocks me over and I have water in my nose, and other days I'm like, oh, I got this. So some days I'm not keeping my head above water and just being okay with that.
Okay.
I think a big key for me is letting go of perfection.
Okay.
You've got some static there. Is that on my end?
I don't know. I can't hear it at all.
Okay. Sorry.
Yep. That's okay.
Letting go of perfection. What a perfect.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
Craig Rochelle has this acronym he uses called GETMO, 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 good enough to move on. And I think that is such a key to doing life right now, of like, this does not have to be perfect. This does not have to be polished. This doesn't have to be like the highest production value. Let's just do this. Let's just get through this. Let's try. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else. Like, I think that's been something I've had to give myself permission for this year, is like, good enough has to be good enough. You know, some days I am rocking it and I'm, you know, churning out product at work and I'm feeling on top of it. And other days I hit a wall, and just kind of letting that be okay. That, not expecting myself to sort of live at whatever standard I had in my head for what that day was supposed to be, or that week was supposed to be. So letting go of perfection is one. I think being grateful, practicing gratitude is another. You know, something, one of the decisions I made in like the first 3 days of bed rest was that I was going to look for the good. And I'm not a journaler, but I just opened a note on my phone, and like every day I wrote down something I was thankful for. And some days I could only, like, it was a struggle to find one thing, and other days I had 20 things. And it just kind of kept my attention focused on looking for things to be thankful for, which was half the battle. I knew complaint would be easy. I knew wallowing would be easy. But I also knew God was being faithful and that I had to look for that. So I think gratitude practice has been one. Couple more. You know, I don't know if this applies to other people, but a commitment I made to myself when this all started for me was I was not going to manufacture meaning about this, that I wasn't going to like ask why and try and figure out all the reasons this was happening and what it was for and how I should use it. And for me, I just knew that like that would be the enemy sort of weaponizing my brain against me, and that I would spend all of this time trying to be productive and trying to like make this spiritually significant instead of just like rolling with it and seeing what happened. Like, one of my first prayers was like, hey, like, God, I know that some people like meet you in a special way when they're in some sort of medical crisis. Like, I feel like you and I are already really close. If you want to say something more to me, you can. If you're wanting something of me, go for it. But I'm not going to like make this a spiritual time. I'm not going to be like, I'm going to fast the whole time I'm in bed, or I'm going to like read 8 chapters of the Bible every day. Like, I didn't want to put that pressure on the season. And I was really resistant to like the memes in early days that were like, Shakespeare wrote this during a plague, and Newton discovered this during a plague, and here's my course on productivity during this plague. And I was like, or we could all chill for a sec. Like, we're already kind of at our max all the time. What if this isn't about doing? What if this is about being? So that's been another for me. Like, I don't know how that resonates for others. And I think the other one that maybe feels a little bit more calculated or whatever, I've just been really judicious about my media consumption. And I'm not always the best at this, but like whether it's entertainment, social media, news media, I've just had to really like modify and keep an eye on my boundaries around that, because I can only take in so much information in a day. And I think that some of that feeds that idea that if I know enough, I can control it, which I can't. I don't need to read a story at 9:30 at night about someone else's sadness that I can do nothing about. You know, like, I don't, even inspirational things, like, even if you follow all these positive people, how many inspirational quotes can you read before none of them are even landing anymore? And so I just, like, I've just been mindful about what time am I looking at these sort of apps, or what time am I consuming these stories, or how much am I consuming, or is this helping me love people in my life better? Is this helping me do my work better? If it's not, do I need to know this? Like, you know, I think that we can kind of trick ourselves thinking we're being informed citizens when really we're just trying to be little deities, like have all the knowledge of good and evil and have all this expertise ourselves and not need to rely on other people for expertise. And I'm like, that kind of sounds like supremacy. That kind of sounds like colonialism. That kind of sounds like the garden. Like, that we don't need to have that level of knowledge. So I guess just being really conscious about what I watch and read and when and how much and what I do with that. Yeah. So those are a few things that I'm trying to do to not drown.
That resonates. That last one really resonates with me. We're reading a book here as a staff, and it's The Deeply Formed Life. And just one of the sentences said in there, we're always being formed.
Yeah.
And we know that. We're being formed by whatever is out there coming our way. And we get to control what is forming us.
Yeah.
We get that choice. What are we going to dwell on? And that's what I heard what you were saying. And man, right now, holy smokes, with everything that's going on with elections, both north and south of the border, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be hard to process.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And like, I think it's privilege to just turn off our ears. I don't think ignorance is the solution. But, you know, right. What purpose is it serving? Is this helping me to know how to love people better? Is this helping me to know how to serve better? Is this helping me to be educated on things that I know are important? Like, or is this just a glorified version of a gossip column? Do I need to know what celebrity got divorced this week? Do I need to even some of I don't vote in an American election. Like, there's nothing I can do to influence the outcome of what's going on there. So I want to stay informed as a citizen of the world, but is that helping me feel better? Is that nourishing my soul? Is that helping my mental health stay stable, or is it just getting me all riled up about something I can't do anything about?
Yeah.
So I think there's a balance, and we all have to find our own, but that's been a boundary I've had to set.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's good. You said something earlier as well in that, as we were discussing around that, and it just reminded me of this thought when we were talking about sort of the expectation of, well, when this is over, we'll be back to normal. Things will be good.
Yeah.
What are we missing when we do that? I mean, so much, obviously, but.
Well, I think, again, back to stay in the day, we talked about not moving too far into the future, but I think it's also possible to go too far into the past. And so memories are great, and memories right now are kind of sustaining. Like, I had to cancel a trip this year, so I'm looking back at pictures and other trips I took and kind of, those were so, but we can spend too long there, and memories aren't accurate. They're influenced by current events, and we often sugarcoat memories, and I think it can make us misremember and sort of misunderstand how the past actually worked. I think that it can keep us stuck. I mean, I think it's a sign that we need to grieve. I think when we start moving into those sort of, when it goes back to normal, or when it's the way it used to be or should have been, to me, that's an indicator that I need to do some grieving, because that's a loss that I'm clearly not ready to let go of. Okay. And so I'm like, that's probably a grief I need to maybe do a bit of processing around. But it's also setting us up for just, I don't know, not a resilient future, because we just don't know what's to come. And the more we kind of put expectations around what that should be, I think the more likely we are to be frustrated or disappointed. Even who we should be, I think it's Brene Brown that defines shame as what fills in the gap between who we are and who we think we should be. Okay. And so I think anytime when this happens, then I'll get back to what I should be. Well, then if I don't get there, then I feel all this shame, right? I think a lot of us are doing that with work right now. I've talked to so many people who just aren't feeling like themselves at work, aren't feeling aren't feeling as productive, and kind of are waiting this season out. I'll just get back to that. Well, what if you don't? Then are you going to feel like a terrible employee or a terrible worker? What if instead of trying to get back to something, we tried to adjust to what the current reality is and be more resilient in the present?
Right. I'd not thought about the grief aspect of what we've lost, in the sense of wanting it in the future. Right. That sort of back and forth. Yeah. I had not thought of that. That's something to think on. Can you put your counselor, registered clinical counselor hat on maybe for a minute?
I think it's been on the whole time.
Well, fair enough. Yeah. You talked a little bit about some of the things, practices that you're doing to help you sort of stay above water. What are some of the maybe signs that we're starting to take on water before we even know it? Or what maybe are some sort of inner self-talk we're starting to have, or things are there things that we can be aware of to sort of stop that, to be able to turn a corner and head down a different direction? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of have talked about a lot of them. Like,
Okay.
Anytime the word should shows up, I'd get curious.
Okay.
Why should you? Where's that from? What message? You know
Okay.
what I mean? Like, where's that should coming from? And is that a realistic should given the situation?
Okay.
So anytime the word should starts to show up, I think our bodies are such big indicators. And so, if I have not learned that this year, like if you don't give your body the attention it needs, it will make you. And so I think anytime we're kind of in that fatigue zone all the time, or more noticing more aches and pains, and not in a like hypochondriac kind of way of running to the doctor every time our knee hurts, but just like noticing our body and our sleep patterns and our appetites and anything sort of physical, like how much has that shifted, and what do I need to be paying attention to? I've talked to a few people this week, and I was struggling with this myself, like lockjaw, like, are you clenching more?
Right.
So lots of physical signs. I think the short temper is kind of the sign for a lot of people, like whether you're prone to anger or not. I think a short temper is a clue. Quick tears, if you're not normally a crier, can be a clue. And not that any of these things are bad, like
right,
or should be avoided, but just they're messages. And are we listening to the messages, or are we blowing past? So those are a few off the top of my head.
Yeah. And I suppose, if those things were not maybe normal previously, and now all of a sudden they're becoming a more regular part of your experience, that could be a sign right there.
Yeah. And I don't think sign in the sense of, like, I think we're all thinking so symptomatically right now because of COVID. Like we're all like, oh, do I have a fever?
Sorry.
Am I coughing? Am I, is my story? And so we get really panicked when we see a sign. And so I don't think like, I'm crying more. Oh no.
Right.
I think it's like, oh, that's interesting. I maybe need to pay attention to that. Or, my body needs to move a bit slower. Or, man, I'm having a harder time of getting out of bed. And that's never been me. I've always been a morning person. Like,
what's that all about?
Interesting. Maybe my body needs more sleep right now. So that kind of thing.
Yep. No, that's true. All right. We have spent a good amount of time going over some things here, and I appreciate your insight. Before, just as we sort of summarize and sort of head down here, just want to ask you, where can people find you on social media? How do they maybe find you or follow you a little bit? You put out videos and little this, that, and the others. I know good stuff.
Thanks. I'm kind of everywhere, just as my name.
I can't hear you.
Oh.
Something was going on there. I don't know what it is. Can you
hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Just my name, Karissa Sovdi, at Karissa Sovdi. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Have a YouTube channel you can subscribe to. I also do run a website called singledoutbook.com, where I frequently blog, and particularly on the topic of singleness, and the single experience of COVID, I think, is a bit unique as well. So Karissa Sovdi, kind of everywhere.
Yeah, there you go. And it's a unique name, so I don't think we're going to be landing on a bunch of people.
If you find me on Google, it's probably me.
Oh, that's great. So what is fun for Karissa right now, and what is hopeful?
Oof, I'm gonna pass on the fun question.
Okay, I know I didn't prep you for that one.
That's not fair. You know what? I've been doing a lot of candy reading this year and a lot of candy listening, and so just like non-consequential things. Like one of my favorite podcasts right now is called Home Cooking, and it's just hilarious. It's the woman who wrote Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, and the guy who came up with the podcast and the TV show Song Exploder, just riffing on like food, and during the quarantine cooking, and people like voice memo in all of their like, I panic bought potatoes and now I don't know what to do with them, or like those kind of questions. And it's just hilarious, and pens and great recipes, ideas. So that's something fun. hope. I mean, lots is hopeful, honestly. I think I mentioned, like, I'm loving the human moments we're getting right now, and the realness and the authenticity. I think that's hopeful. I think the creativity and the innovation that COVID is demanding, and the iteration and trying things and failing and trying something new, I think that's hopeful. And I think that we're kind of getting to this place, we're at the end of ourselves, which is kind of the best place to be, because like, we need God. Like, we can't do it ourselves. And his power is made perfect in our weakness. And so that's hopeful, because maybe we'll just get out of his way and he'll have to do whatever's next. And what a perfect place to be.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to end, Karissa. Thank you so much. There's more we could dig into. Who knows? We just might do this again someday. So Karissa Sovdi on social media, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hope you have a great rest of your evening. And we will be in touch. Yeah, take care. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. Thanks for being with us. I do see the people who wrote in. I was able to figure that out. If you ever miss this in the future, just know that these will be on Saanich's YouTube channel. And so you can always just go in and check out an episode. But God bless you. Live in hope. Yeah. Find God, seek his hope, and have yourself a great evening. Take care.